great to be back. Thanks for having me. I want to welcome everybody. I guess this is our, we're calling this class, Who Are the People in Your Talmudic Neighborhood? In your Talmudic neighborhood, in the neighborhood. But I guess it's a Sesame Street song.
Yes.
I have to learn all my new Sesame Street songs.
Mr. Rogers also? Or?
No, just
Sesame Street, yeah. I have to start learning because soon my kids are going to want to sing it, so I got to be ready for it.
I'm big with Captain Kangaroo.
Okay.
Now it's on HBO, I think.
Is it really? I just assume it's all on Netflix.
Yeah.
That's
we watch it on the
So welcome, thanks for joining us. I want to thank Beth Am for having me back again. It's really exciting. Hopefully we'll continue some of the fun momentum we had last time and take ourselves to even new places this time. The series that I've sort of assembled here is one where we spend so much time in the Talmud talking about the arguments that the different rabbis made. And I was thinking that the arguments and the reason why we speak the way we do is a very true reflection of who we are. In the same way that if you were to think about your own lives and the way you conduct yourselves and the way you act and the way you think and the way you talk is the person who you are. And so I thought it'd be neat to sort of look at some of those teaching styles a little bit, because I'm a teacher also, and so that's a fun thing to always think about and get a chance to reflect on my own practice. But I think for all of us, because we're all students, and so we can think about who we would try to learn from. So we've got an opening story here, and then I'll give us a chance to sort of break up maybe into partners. We can do a little chavruta work. So everyone here, you get 2 souvenirs for the night. Sure. Does everybody know everybody, by the way? Should we? I think I got everybody's names. Sherry, Paul, Bob, Kathy. Right? Okay, good. Good to meet you. My name is Aron, again. And we're going to start off, actually, before even going into the Talmud itself, we'll look in the book, in the Mishnah, to get a description of who these students are. We start off with Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he is famous for receiving the oral tradition from Hillel and Shammai. He's also, there are other stories specifically about him. He's the one, if you've ever heard the story about the Romans who were destroying, and they said, where would you go? And he said, please give us Yavne. And they said, why didn't he ask for Jerusalem? And he says, I'd rather reestablish ourselves there because the Romans were destroying Jerusalem. That's sort of a famous story. Basically, he was like the preeminent scholar of his time, right? He's generation right after Hillel and Shammai, and he's sort of taking on the future of the next wave of power in Judaism.
Is he the one that said that God would, now that there's no more temple, that there's no sacrifice, would God rather have us pray than sacrifice?
Acts of loving kindness.
Yeah, acts of loving kindness. Is that?
Yeah.
That might be, yeah.
Did they carry
right.
him out of Jerusalem in a coffin?
In a coffin, right? That's this guy also.
Excellent.
Okay. So just, I figured to give him credit, one teaching that he would say is if you've learned much Torah, don't think too highly of yourself, because this is why you were created. Right? So
there's always more to learn.
There's always more to learn, and if you're doing the right thing, good. But that's why you're here, is to do the right thing, right? So that's sort of just a fun little intro into what we're getting into. What is neat is that he had 5. So of all of his disciples, there were 5 who were extremely famous, right? The first is Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. The second is Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanania. The third is Rabbi Yossi the Kohen, Rabban Shimon ben Netanel, and then Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Which, if you could say all those names 5 times fast, then you're truly a scholar on your own. But what was neat is he used to share their praises. And maybe could we have a volunteer to read about Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus? Go ahead, Bob.
Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is a plastered cistern which doesn't lose a drop.
Okay, why don't you read about all of the rest of them, and we'll talk after that.
Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanania, happy is the one that bore him. Rabbi Yossi the Kohen is a pious man. Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel is one that fears sin. And Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is like a flowing spring that continually gathers force.
Okay. So this is, I'm sure, as you were thinking about if you could describe your kids, your friends, these are definitely the descriptions we would try to use, right? Are there any that jump out immediately
The first.
as sort of weird. Which one?
The first one.
The first one. Why, Kathy?
I mean, I've never heard of. The others I've heard before.
Mm-hmm. So you've never heard of anybody called a plastered cistern?
No.
Okay. Are we all clear what a plastered cistern is?
Yeah, it's a guy that gets drunk after leaving a ceramic shop.
Actually, I'm not sure what a cistern.
So a cistern
is a well.
It's like
right?
a well,
Yeah.
right? But the thing is, when you're making a well, it's made out of bricks,
Right.
right? And that's what holds the water in. But I guess some water could like go into the bricks and wear it down. So if you put plaster over it,
Uh-huh.
it sort of covers that layer of bricks.
Okay, so it's really full.
So it's what he's saying is he's a plastered cistern that doesn't lose a drop, right? So that's
That's sealed.
Rabbi Eliezer
Yeah.
ben Horkadus.
It's completely
But that means
Smith.
that your water's coming like from rainwater.
That's right. So the water goes in like this, in from there.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
once it's in there,
Yeah. But,
Yeah,
so
it's not
wa-
coming from a stream.
right? It doesn't exactly. It's not coming from a stream.
So water like Torah, which is he never loses a word of
Okay,
Torah.
beautiful, right? So if we're going to say here, let's
Yeah.
think of water as often compared to Torah.
Yeah.
So he never loses a drop of Torah.
That means once he
Okay,
learns
so
it, he learns it.
So now we understand that's a pretty sincere compliment.
huge.
So is
Yeah.
that
It doesn't say he does anything
a
with it.
well or
Ah, so Bob says, but it doesn't say he does anything with it. What does he do though? Very well, he does
Holds it.
hold it. He retains it.
So that sounds more like a jar than
Okay.
a well, because a well gets the water from
Well, what
water
happens to
table.
the well though? How do people get water out of the well?
They pull it up, but it
You have to go
continues
into the
gets
well
more.
and pull it out.
It gets more from the water table. Or
Yeah, but this is
the-
more into, like, for example, in
It's
Masada.
like a
In Masada,
jar.
they discover these cisterns. You know, those aqueducts bring rainwater to the cisterns, and the cisterns just hold the rainwater that falls down into
right.
the cistern.
So there's no like
It's a
tunneling
reservoir.
underground here, right? Because remember, it's plastered over.
It's
Right.
a reservoir.
So it's a reservoir, if you want. Yeah. Okay. So he's going to hold on to the Torah. Pretty good. Can we just take a look at the next one? Rabbi Yochanan ben Hanania, happy as the one that bore him. It's sort of like
His mother?
yeah, right. Like
Gotta be,
she's a
right?
wonderful person, right? His mother's really happy. It's like
No, that she's proud.
Yeah, she's done with him
That
already.
she's very proud of him.
that he
Jewish
right.
mother's not proud.
That he conducts himself.
Right. So supposedly the legend
He
goes
hasn't
that
brought shame on her.
the legend says that she raised him and she always brought him to the Beit Midrash even as a baby, so he was learning at that age. So he did very well. I still think that like
Well,
that's
so-
a
so
terrible
you-
compliment.
I know,
like
it's not a
your mother
compliment.
loves you. Like okay,
It's not a-
good.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
It's not so. But there clearly is something to it.
To be said, something to be said.
Some,
for it.
right, and probably that the fact that he became what he did
Yeah.
was much to her credit. So we could read it that way.
Not-
Either
well-
way, he's not the one we're so interested in, because there's another one that should jump out at us as soon as we continue the descriptions. Rabbi Yossi is a pious man.
His mother isn't necessarily happy.
Well, right. So I don't know if we want to start like reading what's not there about all of
Right.
the other ones, but we do have the praises for each one. Okay, he's a pious man. Possibly we might say even in a generation of many pious people that the fact that you're calling him pious says the degree of his religiosity or the degree of his care and attention that he pays to the laws. Then you have Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel is one who fears sin. So he's always going to do the right thing, and that's not fear
So
of
what's
like.
the difference between Yossi Cohen, Shimon ben Natal?
Yeah, I don't
Between being pious and fearing sin.
I don't
More
know.
positive rather than
Well,
negative.
Well, there are 4 steps to fearing, to your proper relationship with God. And it goes fear, awe, fear, doesn't it?
Okay.
Like you ascend those steps.
All right.
So if he finally fears sin, it means he's achieved the final level of devotion.
Okay, that works. I don't have anything better to say,
Say it,
so
say
let's
it
go with
again,
that.
Bob. Fear, awe,
Yeah, because the
sin.
lowest level is you just are afraid something's going to happen to you if you sin. And then the next is,
But that's as far as he got.
no,
Or no, he's
Fear
saying that he
but then-
transcended
But then
to
there's love. So that's love that we can comprehend on a physical basis, and there's love that's based on spirituality. There's spiritual love, but then the spiritual love brings you to spiritual fear. That there's just no way that you don't fear God because you're afraid something will happen. You just are so afraid you're going to do something wrong that you just
So
don't
you're
fear.
reading into this.
because you're
No,
in
not.
awe. Because
Well,
you're in awe
I
of
am.
God.
But I mean, but that's
In rabbinic terms, right, with the phrase yirat chet is very often put in conjunction with yirat shamayim.
Okay.
So someone has a fear of the heavens and a fear of sin. I think it's more just like a method of conduct. I don't know how it's so different than the piety. I'd have to look into that. Unless the piety is more of like in action and the other one is more in like thought. Like that he acts with a certain higher level of consciousness or something. I don't know. But let's go to the last one, because he's the one that should also jump out at us, especially now that we've got our water imagery.
Yeah.
So Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, what do we say about him?
Flowing spring that continually gathers
A
force.
flowing spring that continually gathers force, right?
So
this,
it's not
by the
just
way-
sitting there collecting mosquitoes.
So we've got Eliezer ben Horkanus, and then, of course, as if it wasn't confusing enough, Eliezer and Elazar. These
Right.
are the two guys we got to keep straight tonight. But he is this flowing stream that just is constantly flowing on top of itself, right? There's this stream, sort of. There it goes. And this is why Mrs. Wolgel is the artist in our household.
And gathers force.
Right? And it's continually gathering
Yeah.
force, so it moves this way, and then it doubles back on top of itself, and then, right. So again, the water here, what are we noticing about him? Right? If the water is the Torah, so what are we saying about his type of Torah?
Gets stronger and stronger.
It gets stronger and
more
stronger and
potent.
stronger.
Yeah.
What else would we say about it, though?
It's driving his life.
Okay, so it's driving and it's constantly moving in a direction. And what happens
Never
to the
done.
water that started over here, as it continues to flow and continues to flow, what do we notice?
It potentiates. Yeah.
Right? It multiplies, it becomes more, and it continues to grow,
And it's actually turbulent.
and it's very turbulent, right? So of the two, which one would you rather, I don't know that we would go swimming
The
in
last
either of these, but if you could imagine, which one would you rather swim in, or would you
Last
feel more
one.
stable in? Would you feel
Well, the
more
first
stable
one
in
you'd
the pit, in the well that doesn't move, or would you feel more stable in the one that's flowing on top of each
I
other,
think
right?
it's two
More
different
stable
ways
in
of
the pit.
studying.
It is two different ways of studying,
And
right?
one
Absolutely,
you
and we're
would
going to
st-
study
yeah.
both of how they taught as well. That's going to be the next thing
Fun
that
to
we
go
do when I send you
rafting
guys
in
to
the
Oh,
private
this is so
learning.
cool. Yeah, this is so cool.
Right?
Such a teacher.
But so this one might be safer, but which one's going to be more fun,
Yeah.
right? So now we've got our two our theme set up. Incidentally,
Do you know
I'll save
Rabbi
that for the next
Chaim
part. I'll save that for the next part.
Rabbi Bruria. You know how he teaches.
So now Rabbi Yochanan used to say, if all, you know what? Who's going to take out? Someone else take a turn.
From partners.
Rabbi Yochanan used to say, the one right before.
Rabbi Yochanan used to say, if all the sages of Israel were on one side of the scale and Eliezer ben Harkunus on the other side, he would outweigh them all.
Okay, so now we've got our scale, and we've got all the all the sages of Israel.
If all the sages of Israel were on one side
So
of the
we've got
scale.
all the sages over here. I don't know how you draw a scale. There's like this part, and then like this part, like that.
Yeah, we get it.
Something like that. Okay, with a little base. That's our scale. And here we have the sages, and on this side, who do we have here?
The well.
Rabbi
have-
Eliezer ben Horkanus, and we said actually he outweighs all of them. So there,
So he's talking about Harkunus again. In a different-
yeah, and here all the sages,
Because his knowledge is so deep.
because he's now right. So he is this
Source.
wealth, this source of knowledge, of wisdom, of Torah.
Well,
right?
maybe because nothing is forgotten.
Nothing is ever forgotten.
The,
Right? So
in
if
the
you want to know,
turbulence, you could say things get thrown.
you certainly could. In fact, we'll see if the Talmud says that, but they might. He says no because he turned the class. So then if we, you know what, let's read the next line now. Because of course we can't just have one statement and not any
They're all going to
disagreement.
say that this one's for them.
So go ahead.
Abba Shaul said in Rav Yochanan's name, if all the sages of Israel were on one side of the scale, and Rav Eliezer ben Harkunus
Horkanus. I think it should be a U, yeah.
was also with them, and Rav Eliezer ben Arach was on the other side, he would outweigh them all.
So now Abba Shaul, who said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, right? So he was someone who heard this from Rabban Yochanan, that Rabban Yochanan didn't say it this way. The way that he actually said it was, all of the sages are on one side, and who else is with them?
Everybody but Elazar ben Aron.
But in particular, so you have Eliezer ben Horkanus,
Yeah.
In particular, Hyrcanus.
who outweighs all of the other sages.
right. This is-
But if you put him with all the other sages, who outweighs them?
Elazar ben Aron.
It's an algebra problem,
Elazar ben Aron.
right?
2ab b squared.
So what it's saying is
That's an algebra
he is
problem.
even more powerful, right, than Eliezer ben
Perfect
Horkanus.
word, by the way. Algebra.
Right?
Algebra.
Algebra.
Okay, so
Wow.
so that's a pretty bold statement to make about just one teacher, right? So he's got to be something pretty powerful here if he's able to outweigh all
Obviously,
of them.
the flowing spring is much more.
So it's the two water guys.
It's the two water
guys
guys,
with two
right?
opinions.
The two waters.
There's
and it-
no algebra here.
Oh no! Well, I mean, if he
I
says,
mean, it's two different opinions.
No, he's saying like a math
if A
equation.
is to
If
B,
you
Yeah,
did,
but
like,
I mean, there's no
you did like
equations.
sages
yeah,
less
Because
than
A plus B
Eliezer
plus
ben Horkanus
C
is less than
But it wouldn't work that way.
Eliezer ben Aron. It wouldn't work that way,
It
but
wouldn't.
it's a cute image. But the point is that clearly their opinions and what they do really weigh
Yeah.
heavily on their practice, right? So at this point, look at part 1b and 1c. On 1b, we have Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, and that's going to be, there's two quick little stories about him and the type of teacher he was. And then there's part 1c, which I'm just going to wish you good luck, because that's our flowing spring. And by the way, I'll just say this because it's my daughter's name. A spring is a ma'ayan.
That's my cat's name.
That's your cat's name?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's his daughter's name.
So you have good taste in names. And the ma'ayan mitgaber is the word. Like gibor is like a hero, if you think about that. So it's like something that's always turning on top. So that's Elazar ben Arach is on part 1c, and he's the ma'ayan hamitgaber. So what I'd say is
Part one. Oh, here it is.
it's on the top of the page.
Yeah. Oh, and then B. Okay.
There you go. I tried to label it to make it a little clear. So let's take like 10, maybe 15 minutes now to break up. Everyone gets a chance to read, talk it over with a partner, see what you discover. What we're going to look for is just what do you notice about their teaching styles? Because we only have them as teachers. We don't even really have so many students in here. There's once in a while there's a student.
Oh, sorry. Little thing in there.
Yeah.
I kind of lost. But
Well,
I
he
didn't.
just had he had a
Oh.
detractor.
He had a detractor. Yeah, but
I think they're gonna have.
I
The
think
Rabbi
it's kind
Yossi.
of weird.
What?
That he says, oh, it wasn't 12. You heard it was 18.
Yeah.
I mean, that really doesn't matter in the.
Correct.
He just criticized. The point is, he was criticizing the cistern. You know,
He was
Eliezer.
challenging him. He was just
Yeah.
like,
Oh, it's not that many you heard, but this many.
Yeah.
No,
Remember,
not
this
that
is an
you.
oral tradition.
yeah.
It's that I.
So as we're telling the story throughout,
Right, you forget how
sometimes
many.
people say, oh, there were 12 that he knew and 18 that he didn't know. And you say, no, it was the other way. There were 18 that he knew and 12 that he didn't
Right.
know. Right. But either way, what's most fascinating about this discussion
That
is
he can't figure out
right,
anything by himself.
Well, I don't know, is it that he couldn't figure out anything by himself, or that he wouldn't figure out anything by himself? Right? Because notice he doesn't say, I don't know. What's the answer he gives when someone asks him a question that he won't answer?
I have not
Heard.
I
Yeah,
have
or
not
I haven't heard.
right?
Yeah.
Meaning I haven't ever learned this, right? No one ever taught this to me. So what's neat is, in order to be this plastered cistern, how do you get water in there?
I study.
Well, so something or someone has to put the water in there, right? Whether it's the rain or whether it's the water pourer. I don't know if that's a job.
The process of learning from
Right.
great rabbis.
So it's only the rabbis who can fill up his plastered cistern.
But plus, he says, in my life, I never said anything I didn't hear from my teachers.
Right, and that's the punchline right at the bottom, right? Is that he says there was never a thing that I have said
So-
that I did not learn from my teachers.
So this guy that detracting from him is.
No, he's actually helping him out,
Oh, Rabbi Yossi?
Rabbi Yossi, because the other one
Oh.
said Of 12 of these, he said, I heard them, and of 18, he said, I didn't. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, you got it backwards. There were 18
Oh,
that
but
he
how
knew.
could he get it backwards? He never forgets. He never drops it, leaks to the top.
This is the storyteller got it wrong.
Okay.
Right? You're saying the storyteller says that
Okay.
he had 12 that he remembered. No, he was better than that. He had 18.
Okay.
So
Right? He
is
had a
it-
really good memory. He
Is
would
it,
pass them.
is it humility, or is it fear?
That
or
what?
That he doesn't repeat anything he hasn't heard except from his teachers,
Well, let's talk about it.
or he doesn't come up with his own original.
What would his value be? Right, let's look at the second part, because maybe then we'll put the two together. What do we know about the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Eliezer? It was shaped like
A stadium.
a stadium, right? So just already, so those of you guys who were here last time, we talked about the normal layout for a Beit Midrash is like a teacher at front, and the students in rows lining straight back. Rabbi Eliezer is different. How is it so? That he is in a rock in the middle, and then here and here are students all throughout, right? And he just sits in the middle. And then it's like an arena. So everybody, and probably we would assume that an arena goes up, right? Like stadium style. So this is like an adventure, an experience to learn from Rabbi Eliezer, right? And then
This is cool.
What's
that they're studying laws of Sukkah. So laws of Sukkah have a lot to do with water.
They certainly do.
So you get the water right.
Oh,
the laws
interesting.
of
Keeps the
Sukkah
imagery.
right, you get the water right.
Okay. Also, in particular, if you think about the Galilee, like it was famous for, like there are many more rivers flowing in the Upper Galilee than there are like in other parts of Israel. That's neat. I'd never looked into water imagery like that. We probably should, though. I feel like that'd be a good course. Just
Yeah,
like water in the
for
Talmud.
sure.
That'd be a cool thing.
That would be a cool thing.
Especially because like some of the waters that are treacherous and all that. Like, what does that mean?
That's right. The course of flow.
Okay, it would.
My son went to one of these water pouring things.
Yeah.
With sukkah. What is it? Right before. It was in New York.
Oh, the water pouring, the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the
Yeah.
water libations at the festival. Yeah, sure. I guess you
We
could
don't
go
do
there if you
that
want to be a dropout.
Right.
That's all right. Anyway.
It's a kind of hippie thing. I don't know.
Okay. We would handle that course swimmingly, I would say. So
It'd be
the
a deep subject.
there you
Give me a stroke.
go. Okay.
I don't think we dry up any of it.
All right. So one time Rabbi Hoshua entered, and what does he do? So there was this one stone in the middle that Rabbi Eliezer sits on, and everybody's gathered around, and Rabbi Hoshua has this very famous statement. He says, it's only famous because I know it. That's what I call famous. It's like if I've studied it, then it becomes famous. If I've never heard it before, I say it's out there. Right, so Rabbi Hoshua entered, and he kissed the stone, and he says, this stone is like
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai. And the one who sits on it is like
The Ark.
Ark of the Covenant. Right? So now what does that metaphor actually mean for us? What does the Ark represent?
The
Chest
container
of
of all the
knowledge.
knowledge.
Okay, that is the container of the
The
knowledge. In particular,
cistern of all the
it's,
knowledge.
it's just like a cistern, right? That you can put. What was in the original Ark of the Covenant?
Tablets.
They put the tablets, right? Those tablets from Mount Sinai actually
And-
were what was inside that Ark of the Covenant.
And the shards of
Correct.
sapphire
Correct. We're talking about Torah in particular here,
from
so think
the
of,
first.
yes,
Luchot.
correct. Right, so he's got the whole tradition all throughout, right? All the Torah as it's been passed down at Mount Sinai. But then the neatest part is, so now the stone, Rabbi Yoshua calls this stone, this seat where Rabbi Eliezer would sit, that stone is like,
The Evan Shasia.
oh, interesting. That's usually about the Beit HaMikdash though, right?
Yeah, but it's the stone, from which, the earth was formed.
Okay. I never thought of that before. That would work.
The stone from
From which the earth emanated. And it just occurs to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you have a solitary stone there, then that would make sense
It's
to
just
sort of
sitting
link
there,
it to other.
asking you
Yeah,
to think that,
right. So that's interesting because the way that I always looked at it
Like a
is
pit.
that the stone is compared to Mount Sinai. So then, what does it mean, or what does it say about learning Torah from Rabbi Eliezer?
Especially
Is
where are you supposed to pour the water? When there was the Beit Midrash, where did they pour the water? Wasn't there like a big hole right next to the stone that they poured the water to ensure
oh
water?
dear, this is beyond my expertise.
Wait,
I should just say I never learned it from my teacher.
Wait, the
there
stone
was
where they
a-
poured the water?
Yeah, in Sukkot, you had the.
There was something. I think it was next to the Mizbeach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Was the Mizbeach on, built on the stone?
I don't know. I don't remember. If I were a better student and slept enough because I
there's
didn't have
a-
I
quiz,
thought
then I
the
would know.
Mizbeach
Because there was a
was-
hole that
was-
exposed the original source of waters, where the waters came up. And on Sukkot, you pour water in
Okay.
to ensure the water out. To ensure that you get your water.
Oh, that it would
correct.
come out. Okay. I never learned that one. That's great.
I don't know if I
So,
learned it, but that's what I think.
Well,
so
I mean,
Rabbi Eliezer
You must have
is
learned
like
it somewhere, so
It's-
I believe it.
Rabbi
I'll learn.
Eliezer is like the Ark of the Covenant.
He's like the Ark of the Covenant, and learning from him then, which means for all the students who were gathered around, means what's their experience like? It's like they're getting Torah directly from,
Like Moses did.
like Moses did, right? Moses got Torah from Mount Sinai. The rock that Eliezer sits on is like Mount Sinai.
But I mean, the reason I'm thinking that is because it's just some more connection with water.
It makes sense though. Because
Yeah, there's. I mean, I believe it. I
Because
would have to look more into it to be able to say for certain. So I don't want to discount it, but I don't want to jump on board either because I just don't know. But it sounds right. It sounds like it would fit.
So the law that Moses got
Yeah.
was
So Moses
pure.
got
It was, and he didn't
Firsthand.
adulterate it
That's
in
right.
any way.
That's
just like Rabbi Elazar.
according to this tradition,
According
right?
to this
Moses
tradition,
gets
right.
Torah directly from God. Moses then passes that Torah directly on, and we've got this guy a couple generations later, Rabbi Eliezer, who guarantees that the Torah that he is teaching is exactly the same as what Moses received.
Right. Wow.
What a class that'd be a part of, right? So I like to always look at things on a spectrum,
It's cool.
because I find that it's never an and or an or, but slightly more of this than that is sort of my worldview. So if we were to think of this as he's got the original source, right? So we would put Rabbi Eliezer. We'll put him on the preservation side, right? All right, down here. Can you guys see? He is the champion of preservation, right? I will only teach you the things that I have learned from my teachers, who, by the way, learned from their teachers, from their teachers, from their teachers, from Moses, from God, right? That is what I will guarantee. If you come into my class, I will teach to you, and it'll be powerful because you're getting the original, right? But at the same time, don't ask me for anything that I haven't learned. Because if I haven't ever heard it as a teaching, I'm not going to give it to you and I'm not going to make it up.
No editorializing at all. Right?
No editorializing. So let's talk for a minute. What are the advantages and the disadvantages to learning from Rabbi Eliezer? Just sort of synthesize it. We'll put it up on the board so that way we can have it that
Well,
way.
you get a sound foundation. It's not a lot of, there's no extempore. There's nothing from outside. It's
There's
just
no creative
that-
theories.
Okay, so is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
It depends on how you want to learn.
Well, then let's talk about
If you
it.
want to learn only the facts, ma'am, just the
facts, ma'am, right?
then you should be going to Rabbi Eliezer.
Do people even have fax machines anymore? Sorry.
And if you want only to do, you don't probably know about Dragnet, just
I do.
the facts.
That's why they call me Friday. It was a Tuesday.
Yes. And just the facts. And if you want to be a little more daring in your learning, then you'd want to learn the turbulent learning
But
of
you'd want to have
Rabbi
the foundation
Arash.
first.
Arash.
Arach, yeah. So for Rabbi Eliezer, if I understand correctly, there's a certain purity to what you're learning,
yes.
right? It's untainted, untampered with.
Just
flip side is
as
it could be limited.
the words that Moses heard
You're like
from
not
God.
making anything out of it.
Okay, right. So you're not doing anything with it, right? You're not
Right.
making
You're
anything
not
out of it.
applying it either.
Okay, so then we would say there's no application.
Right.
That's kind of dangerous because those who only learn Torah but do not apply it. This is in.
But if you
Pirkei Avot.
only learn the applications or the other side, then you. It's sort of like there's this argument in education all the time.
All the
I remember
time.
that Columbia, there was the huge thing about they only taught the dead white men and they needed to teach more modern and it was a question of
Values-based theories, absolutely.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what is the foundation going to be? And then you can go and do what you want with
What is
it.
a source truth,
Right.
right? So source truth.
So let's flip to the other side then,
Right.
because then we'll start to learn about the other Beit Midrash, that if Rabbi Eliezer is preservation, so then on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Ma'ayan HaMitgaber, this overflowing spring, would be the champion of
Rabbi Arash.
Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. And what would we call that? The opposite. I mean, if preservation,
That would be-
conservation
Right.
would be over here on one side, so then what do we have on this
The other
end?
side
This
is
would
using
be
it up.
new applications for Torah.
New
learning.
applications. Can we even call it innovation?
Innovation.
Innovation,
I was gonna say that,
yeah.
right.
There we go.
I was trying to
Oh, we got
find a
visions.
word.
I was going to say that.
Could.
Right?
And
so he is the
creativity.
great innovator.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but-
creativity.
But just to, really work that metaphor, if you're using the water, if the water's flowing out, it has to get replaced. So where do you get it from?
Well, so that thing is, if it's an ever-flowing spring, then each time it grows on top of itself,
There's-
it re-energizes.
There's humidity in
right?
the air. There's humidity
Right, and
in the
that's sort of
ground.
like if you think about the waves crash on each other, right? So then, but that first wave is now gone and replaced by a new wave, but then it comes back and replaces another one, right? And so we see.
And you never step into the same spring twice.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens there
You
then.
know, so.
Or if he needs more sources to start his spring flowing again, then he would go study with Rabbi Elazar.
Right. So then you go back to Rabbi Eliezer
Eliezer.
for that.
It's also
ultimate
different
truth,
every
yeah.
time you look at it. So with Rabbi
Which one is?
Eliezer,
The spring
it's
or the-
always the same every time you look at it.
Correct.
It's, you want something, you want the source, it's him.
So maybe
with a
there's a
flow,
sense of
with an
stability that comes
ever-changing,
from that, right?
with an ever-changing water, every time you look at it, it's going to be different.
That's
'Cause
true.
It looks different every time.
Not only
That's true.
stability, but trust as well.
Okay. Maybe even security. we should call it, right?
Security. There you go. So, well,
Also trust. You trust
yeah,
the source.
trust.
You are
I got trust up
trusting.
here. I'm not taking trust away. I was
No,
looking.
trust. Yeah,
Yes, you're trusting
It's a
the
standard.
source.
It's the standard. So,
However, it's
like what-
fluid. It's not concrete.
Which one? On the
Yeah, I mean, it's
cistern?
water. It's
But
not
But it's stable.
It's
stationary.
in concrete, but water.
Yeah.
I mean, atoms. Of course, they didn't know about atoms, but
But it's the same
they never
water.
move. I mean, they're moving all the time.
But it's the same
Right.
water.
It
It's
is
not-
the same water, but it's constantly moving. I mean, even
But
this
it's
chair
moving within a
is.
contained. But it's moving
It's the
within a
same.
contained
It's the same
space.
molecules. It's the same.
Right.
Okay.
It's the same molecules. The same.
Also, if you
The
think about
very
it,
same ones.
the volume always stays the
Right.
same in the place,
Right.
Whereas over here, like some may drift downstream and other may come in and replace it and all that. So I think that's the difference. So why don't we take a few minutes to read about the flowing spring,
Flowing spring.
and you'll notice right away that the first thing is we're on part 1C now. And we don't really have a description of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach's Beit Midrash. So the first thing I would say is notice where the learning happens, and number two is notice what type of lesson is taught. The one background piece I'll say is that the works of the chariot, Ma'aseh Merkava, is like a very mystical work, Kabbalistic teaching that is considered dangerous and not to be taught lightly. There are specific rules actually governing when it can be taught and in groups of how many and at what time of one's life.
Is it like the Zohar or something?
The Zohar, I think, came later. Yeah. I could look it up. You know,
Our
Chariot.
rabbis taught
No, it's not
once.
necessary.
it's the
Rabbi.
chariot of
Eliyahu?
no it's I think it's in Ezekiel.
Oh,
So it's still like biblical in the origin.
And Rabbi Elazar was driving the
I'll see if I can find something on that. All right, so let's come back in like 10 minutes.
to Rabbi Arach. Don't you know the works of the donkey, right? Or the works of the chariot?
No, he says.
Haven't I taught you this?
No, he says, haven't I taught you that the works of the chariot may not be taught in the presence of one unless
Oh.
he is a sage and understands of his own knowledge. So,
Then Rabbi Elazar said to him, Master, permit me to say something which you have taught me. He answered, Speak.
yeah,
Who?
okay,
That
okay.
Rabbi Yochanan says, Speak.
Yeah, he says, speak. Okay, you know so much?
Tell me.
Yeah, get going.
All right.
I don't
So
think
that-
it's sarcastic.
No, I don't think it's sarcastic. I'm
I think
sarcastic.
he
But
Oh.
he's just saying, okay,
Speak, yeah.
show me. You're saying you
tell
know
me what
this.
you're going to say. No, I mean, he obviously respects the guy a lot. So, okay, immediately Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai dismounted from the donkey. So before he spoke, he gets off the donkey. Before he gives Rabbi Arach a chance to speak, even though he says speak, he gets off the donkey.
So the real lesson is, here's the lesson.
Wrapped up himself up.
It's
yeah.
humility. You're gonna, I'm gonna be sitting on a donkey,
Right.
while you're teaching.
So you wrap.
This is the,
What does wrapped himself up mean?
It seems like to be prepared. I mean, it's almost like the image of a talus.
Okay.
To
study.
Yeah, to be
Maybe.
contemplative
Right.
and
So he wraps
open,
himself up.
yeah,
Or perhaps protected.
protected.
Oh.
Meaning, like,
Yeah.
he knows
what's
when
coming.
Elazar ben Arach is going to
Right.
start teaching, like, what's the first move he does? Right? What's neat is if you look, I sort of broke it down by the
He sat upon a
paragraphs.
stone beneath an olive tree.
Right, so he's protecting himself. What's interesting is if you notice that the beginning of each of the paragraphs there is miyad, right? Immediately, instantly, right? Like
Right.
this is we're moving here. This is our ma'ayan in practice.
Oh, right.
Where we got dynamic movement. Perhaps it's going to be
Right.
uncontrollable, right? There's
Quick thinking.
what do we notice about the scene, right? Like what starts happening when the guy starts teaching?
Right, Master. Why did you dismount?
There are
from
like
the donkey?
2 or 3 big things that break the natural laws of nature. Right, look in the 3rd paragraph
Right.
there. What do you see?
The fire comes down.
Fire is coming down from heavens.
And
Okay,
it encompassed all the trees in the field.
we've got this like fire ring being formed, and what do
And
the
there's-
trees do? They're not getting burnt by it.
They sing.
They're singing out
They're
praises.
singing songs.
Right?
What was the song they uttered? Praise the Lord from earth, ye sea monsters in all deeps, fruitful trees and all cedars. Hallelujah.
Right, which is funny because it's the trees that are singing the
Yeah.
praises. So the connection that he's made now
is
is.
Psalm 149. Is that what you're talking
I
about?
think so. Yeah, it's one of the hallelujahs. That makes sense actually. Kufman, yeah, I
the
think
one
it's
just before
147, I think.
It's
Oh.
one before that. It's one before that.
I think it's 147.
An angel answered from the fire and said, "These are the very works of the chariot." So, okay. So the works of the chariot come live.
Now, what was he doing that he acted well? Is this something he did there or something that he knew from before? Because he tells him that he taught well.
There are some who teach well but do not act well. Others act well but do not teach well. But you teach well and act well. Good question. What did he
Bob,
do?
it's 148.
Was it?
You guys were
48.
both sides of it.
We split the difference.
So
He wasn't the one that dismounted from the donkey. It was Rabbi Yochanan.
right. But he taught well because
No, I'm talking about acting well. I know he taught well.
So
Well, it's sort of, I guess, think about
Is that past
like
experience?
fulfilling what you're teaching, right? Like it's you teach, not only teach it, you live what you're teaching. Right. The idea of you say you're going to teach Ma'aseh Merkava, the work, these mystical works, so then you'd better be able to do it. And this is my knowledge of Kabbalah is
So
very basic, if even that.
Was the fact that he brought down the fire and the
So that
trees,
means he's saying the
that he's
names of
doing
God correctly, right? The mystical, spiritual names, like he's doing all that correctly.
Okay.
That's what that means.
right.
Should we debrief a little bit here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have. I looked up a little bit about Maaseh Merkava, and it just says it's a Hebrew language Jewish mystical text dating from the Gaonic period. So we're talking just after the Amoraim. So we're looking early 600s, 500s, 700s. It comprises a collection of hymns recited by the descenders. The descenders must be people like us, I would imagine, or like the received ones with the traditions.
This would be common era.
What's that?
Common era.
Yes. Which is interesting because I thought they were Tanaim.
So we have a Yochanan Zakkai
So
who's
is
around
Amora-
at the time
is
of the
it Amora?
destruction.
Yeah, so that I don't
So
know
this
how
is
that could be. I think it's a different Maaseh
Is he
Merkava.
Rebbe or Rav?
Well, he's Rabbi because
yeah,
these are all Tanaim because they're
Yeah, so
all
he's
from the
Tanaim,
first temple, so,
yeah.
or second temple, I mean.
That's
But
a
so that must not be the right link. Whatever, it's some mystical text that I clearly don't know about because I'm not a mystic in that way. But there are just the fact that this is the text he wants to teach, right? Usually when we get Talmudic stories, it's, hey, Rabbi, can I teach you a halacha that I learned, right? And they teach some sort of law, or can I teach you a lesson, a parable, some sort of ethic that I have learned, right? But he's like, they're going already. First thing we notice is they're not in a Beit Midrash anymore. They're on a journey, right? That's where he starts his lesson. Hey, Rabbi, can you teach me some more of that wild, crazy, passionate, mystical stuff? And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, even that has rules. Right? We don't do that in the presence of one. Why? Presumably because it's dangerous. And if the student isn't prepared for it, then, I don't know, they could die or something. Like it's bad. So he says, fine, then let me just tell you back one of the teachings that you taught me and see if I'm getting it right. Okay, great, go ahead. So now we've got this immediately, right? We're always moving and moving and moving. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai gets off the donkey. Why?
Protect himself.
Right?
I mean,
To
But I
protect
think
himself.
it's also not kavod to be on a donkey.
Yeah.
So
To do
certainly-
this holy stuff.
Certainly there is that piece. But also, right, a donkey is less stable than sitting on the ground on a rock next to a tree, right? He needs... When the show starts going, when the fireworks start blowing, you got to make sure you're in a secure spot.
And you probably
right?
wouldn't want to be next to a tree.
Right. But what's interesting is, notice how the teacher-student line gets blurred a little bit here. Right? From the beginning of the story, who's the teacher?
Rabbi
Yochanan ben Zakkai. But who's leading the donkey?
Rach.
Right? Elazar ben Arach.
He's
Right?
not leading.
But he's not leading him, he's guiding him from
Back.
behind.
No, he's encouraging him to go forward.
Right, he's probably hitting him with a stick, right? But he's clearly the one guiding the direction of the donkey.
he's
now.
not even on a donkey. He's standing there.
That's right, he's walking alongside.
I thought he was on a side.
So, but look at how the power shifted, right? We had, just visually, you could even see that we have teacher on the donkey, student behind. I'm going to teach now. Fine, I'll get off the donkey. Now, we say out of respect, and if the angels are going to come here, should I be on a donkey? But maybe there's an element of I have to be safe and secure. Also, that if you're the teacher now,
I have to be on your level.
I have to be sitting down, and you have to be up teaching.
Well, is
right?
there anything, any respect item about, the more honored person rides and the less honored person walks?
That would make sense.
I don't know, but...
It would. I mean, right? Because if we usually think of the servant as the one who pulls for the master, and one of the best ways to be a student is to serve
it's like
your master.
Mordecai, gets taken around by Haman
Yeah.
on a horse.
Right, and Haman was leading the horse with Mordecai riding on it. But also, I mean, we have in every case, a king was riding on the cavalry, and the servants are pulling the things along the way. I mean, that would seem to be a very natural distinction to make. But then we already pointed out what happens when he starts teaching, right? It's not just a lesson that the teacher is going to say, okay. I mean, we've got a whole show of display here. And because he did it so well, then we have this last piece that says, by the way, Elazar ben Arach, I want you to realize how special you are, right? Some can teach, they can talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And some walk the walk, but they're not able to articulate what they're doing as they're doing it. You've got this very special gift, right? You can do both, right? What you teach will be fulfilled, and you do establish that which you say you're going to do, right? And that I think is the key. Let's go back to our scale imagery, right? Because what was the description about Eliezer ben Hyrcanus and Elazar ben Arach? We said that
Hyrcanus was the heavy.
he was the heaviest, but what does that mean? Right? We don't say that he's better. Right? What's the words used in the text? We should probably go back to that
Harkanos
one.
was supposed to be the one who, from
Nothing.
one example,
From one example,
that he was the heavy of all sages.
of all the
together.
sages, because learning from
Then-
him
yeah.
is going to outweigh any other original thought that anybody else could have.
And
Because
then-
he's got the original.
Then they said take Arash and Harkanos together, and you've
Or
got
put Hyrcanus with all the other sages,
okay.
right? Put the cistern with all the other sages.
And Arach is better.
And Arach, not better,
Or
right?
is
Heavier, weighs more.
Except
Perhaps
that-
more powerful, more influential, we
Right.
could say. Right?
Rabbi Yochanan said on his own
Yes.
that Hyrcanus was.
Correct.
Somebody else comes and quotes him.
Yeah, we take their word for it.
We do?
We do.
Okay.
Because that's how, that's an oral
Yeah,
tradition
okay.
that eventually got written down. By the way, Abba Shaul, whenever you see the name like Abba in the Talmud, it's generally referred to as a great scholar who
Okay.
just never became a rabbi.
Okay.
So he's not just Shaul, some guy. He does have, he does have credentials. Right? The Abba means teacher in the same way that Rav would, but it's like he didn't go to school. He just, became a very learned person. I don't know. So we've got our two images right here, two different styles of learning. We talked about how here we can add the cistern style is going to be unchanging, right? It's going to give us a strong foundation, purity, stability. Maybe it's even reliable, right? That's when you say we can trust it. Right, and there's a certain power to that.
But he doesn't have experiences. We haven't heard of Eliezer having experiences, and we just heard of Elazar having experiences.
So which one is more memorable, right? Is that experience?
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. What else? How else do we describe now his learning style? Right, let's put a couple of things on the plus minus chart here.
It's kind of risky. What if it didn't come up?
Okay, right, it's risky. Right? Could we even say dangerous? Mm-hmm. Right? You're
Yeah.
literally playing with fire.
Because-
Like this is, if you're going to start teaching these, right? If you're not talking the laws of sukkah, right? You're not talking the laws of a hut, a stable foundation. Even for as temporary the walls are, it's considered permanent for this week, right? You're not talking Shabbat. Any laws of kosher. Is this pure? Is this impure? Looking at the things.
And Yochanan was scared.
Yeah, he's scared. This is tough stuff. This is the things you're not supposed to touch, until you're fully prepared to do so. You couldn't even teach it to one other person. He's right. So that's
What would have happened if he set out to teach it, but he loused up?
And we wouldn't be talking
it'd
about
be a
it.
very
We
different
wouldn't
story.
be. Yeah, we wouldn't be. We wouldn't have found out about it.
Or we would have, because we've heard about people that went into there were 4 rabbis that went into the Pardes. They went into the orchard, I don't know, whatever translation is,
Yeah.
and it says one of them came out crazy, like he wasn't able to handle what the other one of them found peace, and but we do have that story of the 4 rabbis going in, and each one sort of leaves with a different type of experience. It's true we might not have had it in the story here like this, but clearly what we're learning from this is that not only was he such an innovator, he was good at it, right? Like he could make worlds shake.
But how does that change? First of all, his learning could only be given to. It couldn't be given to everybody.
Whose?
Yeah.
flow, the spring?
Yeah.
Arach?
The
Elazar ben Arach?
yes, Arach.
Okay.
Yeah. So his teaching could only go to a special few. He can't change the world because he only can teach, or maybe he can do anything.
he
in
can
this
change
case,
the surrounding environment,
right?
right? We just saw what he did with this.
But
right?
he's not going to go out and teach to the masses.
Or perhaps in order for him to pass on his message, he has to go out to the masses, right? Whereas the difference is here, people will come to the well to drink from the well.
Right.
But people don't go near a spring if it's wild and treacherous
Yeah.
and crazy. The spring has to flow over to them.
Right.
Maybe does that continue there, right? So
Yeah.
So
that's
is that a
probably more
plus or a
apt.
minus?
Yeah.
Maybe as we'll say must
Well, I
go
think it's a
out
plus. I think it's a plus and a minus.
To others. Okay, so we'll put it here. Right, it must go out to others. At the same time, right, he has the ability to change the environment. Right. He can change surroundings.
But one would think that if he has that ability, he also has the ability to do the kind of teaching that everybody else is doing, of stuff that he heard.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he doesn't prefer to do that. Because if he does have that ability, then he can go out and speak to lots of people. But this stuff,
right,
you can't talk to lots of people about that.
So you probably, right, you can't. But it doesn't mean that you couldn't have like one or two at a time, and then one or two at another time, and one or two. Like, you can still.
But not the fiery stuff.
The fiery stuff in a group of 3, I think it could be taught. I think that's the rule from in a different place. I remember reading that.
This
one.
just says that if you can't teach it to one
Right.
unless the guy's a sage.
Right. But still, notice that the piece that he shares is something that he learned, right? So there is a piece of, I got it, but I'm going to take it. And by the way, when you taught it, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, I don't know if the fire came. We don't know. We don't have that
Right.
story. Maybe the fire came down, maybe it didn't. But it seems to be that Rabban Yochanan is so impressed with the way that Elazar ben Arach is teaching that you could read it either way. I don't know the answer, and I don't want to force.
Right.
I don't want to force a reading on if it's not genuine.
Or it validates him.
Or it validates Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, but we don't really have so many other.
No, it validates Rabbi Arach to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. In other words, that
I was teaching you this stuff, and you actually got it.
And you got, and the heavens didn't
Very
destroy
nice.
you. You obviously are. You're even in your way of thinking and in your trying to think your creativity, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're still pure in the thought. You're still got the same.
So you're doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing.
You're doing the right.
You're
very
not
nice.
taking us in a wrong direction.
Which is funny because we might have said that
In your
the
investigative
unpredictability.
The current of the stream is still in the right direction.
Okay.
Very good.
So I don't know if that's not necessarily a
sweet.
general thought, but we do know that about
Yeah.
him, right? The current is in the right direction. And you know what? Let's use that as our segue to the final source, because what happens when that current is allowed to flow freely without any guidance? And then that's actually the next story that we have, which is how we're going to conclude tonight. So let's read part 1D, which is a story that Rabbi Chelbo says.
Is he in one of these?
It's the back page there.
Yeah, but he's not. He comes from.
Rabbi Chelbo he's just the
He just dropped
storyteller.
in, yeah.
Okay.
He's the narrator. We still got our Elazar ben Arach guy.
Elbow.
The wine of Perugita and the water of Diomeset cut off the 10 tribes from Israel. That's just our introduction. Why are they so bad? Presumably the wine was very tempting, and the waters, these are like bath waters, right? The hot, people would go there and take a swim, and apparently it was like a hedonistic heaven.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like that you could go there.
Is it supposed to, it sounds Greek, are you supposed to think that
I
they
know
were
that's
Greek?
what
Yes.
I thought it sounded.
Yes, these are absolutely in Tiberias.
Although this
and- yeah.
Perugita sounds like it's in Italy.
Cut off the 10 tribes from Israel.
Well, one's Rome, one's Greece.
Oh,
Cut
yeah.
off the 10 tribes from Israel.
They're both, like, not
Diamethod.
good
So
for you.
supposedly that the tribe of, I think, Ephraim was like over there and said, oh, we want to stay here. And so that was what started other nations,
And
other
it's
tribes
damaged.
saying, well, then we're going to stay over here where it's lush and where this is right.
So they got
Um,
the words.
Supposedly. But anyway, the real line that we're after is the second line here.
Rabbi Elazar ben Arach visited that place.
Yeah. You want to read this out loud? Let's do this one
Sure.
together.
Let's do it together.
Yeah. Go ahead.
He was attracted to them, and his learning vanished.
Okay, so now
Wow.
we let our innovator go and be free and be out in nature, and he even got to be with water, right? But his learning vanished.
He lost
He
his
got
way.
so
It's like the
immersed.
guy in the Driven Leaf.
I don't know the book.
Oh.
I mean, I know the book. I haven't read it. Yes.
You know who it's about.
No.
As a driven
That's
leaf.
one for
It's
your
the
computer.
rabbi. He was
Was it Rabbi? It wasn't Rabbi Akiva, was it?
no,
Okay.
no. It was one that fell, but he was very learned.
Elisha ben Abuya?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Rabbi Elazar
I
visited
didn't
that
need the
place.
computer, Bob. I got
He
that
was
one.
attracted to them, and his learning vanished.
Okay. Now, interestingly, I'akar, the Aramaic word there, is sort of like uprooted. So I probably should have translated that better, but I like that it says his learning vanished, because then we're going to tell this story from one particular perspective, and then we'll have to read it a second time.
What
and
did you
see if we
say
can-
the first one? The first translation was?
La'akor is to like uproot.
Okay, uproot.
Like something.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's all we have. But so keep going. So supposedly his learning vanished.
When he returned, he arose to read the Torah.
Okay, so he comes back to shul. It's Shabbos. The way they used to do it is they'd call for the first aliyah. Instead of you just saying the blessings, you would say the blessings and then also read that aliyah.
So are we to assume that he sinned in some way?
No? Why?
Because why would you lose? Why would God let him lose this vast knowledge?
Why would he lose?
Beautiful question.
If it wasn't
Let's
a
hold off,
sin.
and then at the end of the story
if it
we'll start
wasn't
asking.
a sin to do it to be hedonistic,
Yeah.
then God would let him continue in his glory. I mean, that was his glory.
Perhaps.
And he lost his glory
Yeah.
because he stepped away from it.
Okay.
When he got
Perhaps.
when
We'll I don't want to say no just yet, Sherry, but
Sorry.
let's read through and then we'll see if we can get to the end of it.
he got to the words Chachodesh Chazeh Lachem.
Okay. Hachodesh hazeh lachem. This is coming from the book of Shemot, by the way. I put the quote down there at the bottom.
This month shall be unto you. This month shall be unto you. This month shall be unto you.
Right. So the full verse is Hachodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim
It's the first
Rishon hu lachem lechodshei hashana.
It's the first commandment, which is to say the foundation.
This is the first commandment given to the entire people of Israel. Once God is there, they leave Egypt, and he says, I want you, the first thing you're going to do is set up a calendar. And this month that you just left Egypt shall be the first month for you of all of your year. Right? You count your years differently than my year. Mine is a year of kingship. We call that Tishrei. That's the Rosh Hashanah there. Your year is going to start in Nisan. Right? The Exodus from Egypt. So set up your calendar now. And that's the first mitzvah given to Bnei Yisrael. Bob, you're very right to point out that the part that he's reading may in fact be significant, like what he's reading and why. But let's see what he does with this line. He's reading Hachodesh hazeh lachem, and instead
He read
Well, that's the
Acherish.
Haya libam.
Haya libam.
The first commandment.
Right?
the Jews
So what
received.
happened? Not only did he forget his learning,
Not from Sinai.
But
he
different.
looked at these letters.
This was 3 weeks ago, I think.
Oh,
I'm sure.
okay, it was before Mount Sinai.
The Resh and the Dalet were.
So he looks at this
Yes,
word
a problem.
Hachodesh hazeh lachem, and instead he reads it as Ha-cheresh Haya
Libam.
Libam. Which, by the way, if you look at how the letters are and how they'd be printed in the Torah, the Dalet and the Resh are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
The Zayin, I guess we make the Zayin into a Yud, is very similar. Right? And then the Chaf turns into a Bet pretty easily also.
Wow.
So not only did he forget his learning, he forgot how to read.
But maybe his
it's
vision
actually-
was blurred.
it's
What's that?
actually-
His vision.
His vision was blurred, right? Maybe he wasn't seeing clearly.
Or his vision.
Well, he
His
has wine.
vision of Torah.
Maybe
His vision
he
of
had
Torah
the
was
wine of
blurred.
Perguda.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
His vision,
He got
actually,
drunk.
his vision of Torah was blocked.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps.
It strikes me the first two, he did it by lopping off edges, so he's lopping off exactness.
Uh-huh.
But what I can't figure is that you're adding to get the bait.
So you telling me that he's cutting off
Yeah.
things and then adding things of his own?
Well, yeah.
Well, doesn't that sound like innovation? Well, so then did he forget his learning, or did he uproot his learning so much so
Yeah.
that even the Torah he's trying to teach the other rabbis
That's the
with?
danger, and that's the risk.
It's the risk,
Yeah.
but let's read the story and let's try to figure out. Now we've got attention here. We have to figure out which.
Doesn't that happen?
What? That people misread the Torah?
No, but that they. I don't know. Is there ever instances where the letters are slightly changed, or?
There are like kriyuktiv, where like it's written one way and we read it a second way.
Right.
That happens, yeah. That's a little bit different.
Okay.
Although there are some times where it is a slightly different word and would change the meaning in that way. Yeah, or sometimes it's like a harsher word that's written, but we read a softer word out loud. But anyway, the sages prayed for him, and thank goodness, all was restored. His learning returned. Hooray! Okay, and this is what we learned in the Mishnah, right? If we went back to Avot.
So what does the second one mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you in a second, in a moment. Let's get through the end of the story because we have to decide: is this a good thing that he did, or is this a bad thing that he did?
I don't know.
All right, so that's why I'm gonna let it hang in the balance for a minute.
I don't know what that
It's
means.
called it's called the curiosity gap. It's gonna make you pay attention to
I like
the end of the
this.
lesson.
This is
All
good.
right,
It's like news at 11.
there you go. Right. We'll get the highlights version of it later.
I'll give you the highlights.
The Sports Center. Okay, so this is what we learned in the Mishnah. We have a teaching in the Mishnah. Rabbi Nehorai said, "Be exiled to a place of Torah." Kathy, do you want to do it? And don't say that it will follow you, for your companions will establish it in your possession. Meaning, you need companionship in order to establish Torah. Don't say that, I'll just go to, where did he go? To the waters of Diomeset and the wine of Perugita, that he went up to this Tiberian resort, right? And don't say, Torah is going to accompany me, because it's not Torah that accompanies you. Torah is accompanied by people. So if you go to a place all on your own to say, I'm going to go learn Torah on my own, no. You need to make sure there are other people there too.
So you don't go up in a cave
right.
by yourself.
Or like, don't send your son away to, for high school to go learn in a yeshiva elsewhere, unless it's actually like an established yeshiva with other people there that can supplement and support the learning and make it established.
I read it more as don't go out, don't assimilate, don't go off into these other cultures and, act like those guys.
How do you read the Torah line about that?
Because Diomesid is Greece and Perugita is Rome.
That's also Greek. Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
I thought these were both in the upper in like the Tiberian
Well, maybe
Straits.
so, but I mean,
Metaphorically?
yeah, metaphorically. I mean, to me, it's sending out that emanation. That he's drinking wine. I mean, what kind of wine is he supposed to drink or be drinking? And the baths, the water baths. That's he's having physical pleasures. That's what the Greeks did.
Well,
Sure.
I think, but that's the point. He's such a learned guy, and he's so high up in this that even a guy like him, who's ultimately human, if you go to a place where you don't have, you can lose perspective, and like you said, eventually, assimilate. If you put yourself in a situation
Where there's no holiness.
if you already put yourself in a situation of temptation, you've already failed. So you should never put yourself in that situation to even be tempted.
Yeah, he stopped his waters flowing.
Right.
And
He failed when he went alone. It wasn't.
Yeah.
He didn't fail by being tempted. He failed by being alone because that was going to make him. That was going to bring him to temptation anyway.
Right. So we actually there are actually other stories of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach who everyone followed Rabban Yochanan to Yavne. He went with his wife over to this place, and then at a certain point. He says, "How come none of the students have followed me? I have to go out to them." And then his wife says something like, "Well, who follows who? The mouse or the cheese, right? If they're hungry, let them come to you." And he says, "Oh, okay." But then you start to see his decline because he needed to be going out to the people because that's what the spring does, right? It flows into them and it shares and shares and shares, and that's how it grows. So he stopped flowing, right?
Yeah.
Or perhaps he started flowing within himself, and then he gets himself into a place where he's just flowing on top of idea on top of idea, and he becomes just so brilliant that it's unrecognizable to anybody else in the modern
Right. And then compared
world.
to
Hyrcanus, yeah.
who since there's no innovation there, there's no risk. So he can be alone.
He could,
Yeah, and he'd be okay.
and because all he's going to do is sustain.
Right.
There's no growth.
Right.
It's a rubber ducky in a cistern.
So what's really neat is, so we have this Mishnah that it puts from Rabbi Nehorai, and it says, "And don't rely on your own understanding." What a very powerful teaching. Great. A Tana taught, this is cool now, his name was not Rabbi Nehorai, but Rabbi Nehemiah. You got it wrong. You got the names confused, right? We've seen this before. We saw this in one of our earlier stories. Others say, no. This guy, Rabbi Nehorai, was actually, what's it say?
Rabbi Elazar ben Arach.
Eliezer ben.
It was actually Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. So who's the one who taught this lesson about make sure that when you're exiled to a place of Torah? It's Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, the guy who was exiled to a place not of Torah. So he knows that lesson so true that he's the right one to teach that lesson. Right? And why is he called Nehorai? Nehorai, Nahor, or Lehanhir, is to enlighten. And so he was called Nehorai because he enlightened the eyes of the sages with his halacha.
Because he experienced it.
So we could, the first time we're reading it through, it's because he experienced what it is to be alone in a place of Torah.
And be tempted.
And to lose it all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
And the second time?
Can we read it the second time through? You know I love doing this, right? This is the best part.
I can't
wait. I have to ask a question.
That's a wonderful thing.
In the end,
Yes.
did he follow his wife, or did he eventually go back
That's
to
a
going
different guy.
out to the people?
So in the other story, let me see if I was thinking about including it.
I
and
mean,
chose
would his
not
wife
to.
be the demise of this great rabbi?
I wonder if I have it here.
And if the wife was wrong, did she get killed?
And was it an honor killing? We don't do that.
I don't know if I have. Did I put it here? I don't think I have that one here.
What is Hacheresh Hayal?
Yeah, so let's translate that, right? Because that was
Yeah.
the.
What does that mean?
No, I didn't bring it here. Sorry.
Cheresh.
I don't remember what happened at the end of that story. Cheresh is a word that means death.
Okay, the death was.
And libam, that one you might actually know, like the word from lev,
Well, from
Oh,
his heart.
their heart, right? So libam is
Death of
lev
heart.
shalahem or levavot shalahem, right? So their hearts,
Died.
right? So their hearts were death.
Death. Oh, death.
So now, if we want to read it the second time, he goes away to this place that everybody has said is treacherous and horrible, and it's what cut off the 10 tribes from Israel. Don't go here. You will lose your Torah, right? That's why I translated it that way to sort of cheat the first time through.
Okay.
But what is he actually doing? He's uncovering a whole new world of Torah. You guys, you're saying no to this place, but we could innovate here. We could turn this into something. So what does he do? He comes back, and it's the time, by the way, if you had to pick one of the most rigid, formulaic, structured pieces of Judaism, how about the calendar? That's the one thing we cannot change.
Right.
It's established. This many days from here till here, this many days here, on this day you do this, at this time of the year you do that. Structure, formula. That's going to be the one thing that ruins a spring, right? It needs that free-flowing space. So what does instead he say? And Bob, here's where he pointed out. He says, take it off a little bit, take it off a little bit, add to here, right? That's even better than I would have ever thought of saying. But he says, guys, your hearts are deaf. You're listening so much to your mind about making sure that everything is fitting inside this tiny little box.
Sister, yeah.
You're forgetting about the passion. You're forgetting about the experience. You're forgetting about this danger. But with this danger comes excitement, comes life, comes vibrancy, comes flowing, comes growth, right? Now,
Let's pray for this guy.
What's that?
And the rabbi said,
we got to pray for him, right? Because what happened is he grew so much in this place that what he was doing was unrecognizable to them. It's almost like he was speaking a different language. They couldn't hear it, they couldn't understand, they prayed for him, and then when they say his learning returns, right, so what does it really mean? It means he's able to teach them again. Right? He had to get back to that level. He had innovated so much to the point where it was it's like the Newton, right? When the Newton first came out, you guys, is this? Am I dating myself? This is before my time, right? When Apple first came out with this big, crazy, fancy idea, people looked at it like, what is this? Why would I ever want this? So they have to go from there to what was it? The Palm Pilot, right? That's the first. Oh, okay. It's the Franklin Planner, but just in a pocket. I can do that. Now you go one step more. So now you do this, and then you go one step more. You couldn't go from the Palm Pilot to the iPhone 6. Right? People would look and say, that's crazy. You can't innovate that much. We don't know what to do with it. It doesn't even make sense to us.
There's a pace to innovation. And
there's a pace to it. So that's what happened, is he had gone to this place that everyone says, don't go there. And everything that he does, he comes back and he says, guys, I got these amazing new thoughts. Look, your hearts are deaf. And they're like, we don't understand you. Right? So he had to scale it back. They pray for him. Eventually, we don't know how long this process took, but eventually he's able to get back to the place where he could teach people again. But we end up seeing from both ends of the spectrum, I think, the dangers or the fears.
Jesus did the same thing, and look what happened. I mean, he went a whole. I mean, but still, it's the same idea.
Sure.
But
and I just erased the scale. But look at how powerful Rabbi Elazar ben Arach was.
Yeah.
Right? That when Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai says, this one of my students can really outweigh all of the other sages of it, because he was that much of an innovator.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and it got to the point where you innovate so much, and you go dealing with the dangerous ways and the forbidden, pleasures, and he was doing it right. That's how strong he was. But we couldn't connect to it. And so we couldn't have him as our teacher anymore, because he needed to scale back, teach us that this other thing about make sure when you're exiled, go to a place of Torah. If you go on your own, right, don't assume that it'll last for you. And now his wisdom becomes that much more powerful.
And he sees it.
That's right. And he learned it.
He sees the bigger picture.
He saw that
the ultimate picture.
Absolutely. Which is why he's the right one to teach us that.
And that's why
lesson.
he's different than
Well, don't you need all of them?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, is notice
So
how
interesting.
both of
This is
these
great.
two
Or
students
both of them at least?
had the same teacher.
Yeah.
Right? And even if you look structurally, they're sort of the bookends. Right? We have all of the sort of normal behavior people. We have the happy is the one whose mother bore him, the pious man, the one who fears sin. But on the two ends, right, the two extremes here, we've got preservation and innovation. And both of them to the extreme. That if you get to one end, right, it'd be such a power to learn with Rabbi Eliezer. It's like you're hearing the revelation at Sinai every time he talks. You sit in this big, powerful arena. I mean, I have to imagine the acoustics were amazing, right? Just this booming voice would just teach the halachot, and this is the law, and this is what we learned. And wow, right? Or you go exactly to the other end, and it's just buckle your seatbelts and enjoy the ride, because you never know where you're going. It's so unpredictable, right? But then eventually, if you go too far to one side or too far to the other, so I guess I'll give you, since I gave you the end of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach's story, Rabbi Eliezer, actually in his stout conservatism, actually gets excommunicated towards the end of his life.
Oh.
Wow.
Why?
And gets into the arguments with people and starts calling them.
Did they ever confront each other?
These two, I don't know. Perhaps.
Well,
I'd have to look more.
I mean, they're diametrically opposed.
It's only an hour and a half class, you know.
That's the one where he fights for control of the
Elazar ben
That's
Arash
Elazar ben Azariah. Oh, Rabbi Eliezer
and
is
versus
the same Rabbi Eliezer in that story.
Wait,
Yes,
versus
and they
Rabbi
excommunicate him.
Eliezer.
Yes, that's the same one. Should we do that story? Would that be fun?
Wait, versus what?
Let's do the overthrow the big midrash. Let's do that one.
Okay.
We can do it. Why not?
The problem is I already heard about it. The other, do something I haven't heard of.
Well,
Well,
have you
maybe
heard it?
the rest of us haven't heard.
Have you heard it the way that I would teach it?
Yeah, you know you're going to get more insight.
I don't know.
Slop and edge off here.
Yeah, great.
Is Lavinage, right?
Great class.
Well, because I always like to look at the symbolism and the underlying messages that the text isn't telling us.
Wait, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus
Yeah.
was excommunicated?
Yes,
Didn't it kill him?
sure.
I mean, didn't it
And he
just
ends up on his finally his students get the courage, towards the end of his life. It's actually one of those hauntingly beautiful tales, that towards the end of his life, his students finally get the courage to go and start asking him questions, and his last words, they ask him a bunch of different impurities on certain subjects, and like the last one that he says, the final word is tahor, which means pure or like unmixed. And then with that breath, he passes away. And so there's sort of
they
like
don't ask him directly somehow. There's some kind of distance between them somehow.
well, they don't go like right up to the bed or something,
They
right?
call it into the room.
Yeah. Or he calls out, right? He's right.
Yeah, right.
But he was so pure. How could somebody so pure be considered?
Well,
there's a
a
lesson in there
heretic.
too, right?
But it's not that he was a heretic, right? That he was so obstinate, right? There's a sense of, you look at this foundation, this stability, but at a certain point it could become stubbornness, right?
Well, I
if
think
you're
there
unchanging,
might be some modern day.
no politics, just
I
rabbinics.
It's just
But
so
it is-
painful.
Well, but if you think about it, right? Even in your own life, right? We've all changed our Judaism in some way, shape, or form, right? Even if we're committed slightly more, slightly less at a different time, Judaism is a dynamic thing. It moves with us, and it has to, right? I mean, that's the beautiful image about the why there can't be steps going into the altar in the Beit Hamikdash, right? The real reason is listed by the Torah, but if you think about it on the metaphorical sense, if you have steps leading up, you can stop on a step and you can pause. But the idea is, if you have a ramp, then you're constantly ascending, or if you're holding still, then you're slipping backwards, right? There is no plateau. There is no place to wait. And I think that on our quest for Torah, on our quest for Judaism, our quest for meaning, we're constantly having to grow and slide and grow and slide and grow and slide, but that's the reality of the process, right? And I think that's just a very true way of looking at our own journeys. So I think it's beautiful to be able to put the two extremes up here and recognize that both of them were regarded very, very highly, right, by the sages, certainly by their teacher. Both of them had a very strong power to them. One of them was obviously more dangerous than the other, and perhaps that danger turned into power if we're not checked. But at the same time, we also learn from both of them, right? And both of them are considered great sages and great teachers. Yeah, so that's. So these are two people in our Talmudic neighborhood. I was thinking if we can continue the series,